Hello and welcome to part one of our two-part video series, Introduction to the first public draft of the updated zoning map to go along with the broader update of the Unified Development Code. My name is Nicholas. I'm a planner with the Division of Planning and Development. We've been working hard behind the scenes here at DPD, and we're also excited to share this first public draft with you, and we're all grateful that you're taking the time out of your day to learn about what we're going to be proposing, what changes, because we want to get this right. And to get it right, we need your feedback. What this video is going to do is it's going to give you all the background information that you need to know in order to confidently give us that feedback. This is, like I said, part one of a two-part series. This, we're going to talk about the actual content. You know, what are the rules going to be? What's going to be allowed in my neighborhood? What's not? Part two is going to be more of a tutorial. We're going to show you basically how to work the map and how to leave your feedback to make sure that we get it, we review it, we take it into account when we go to our elected officials with a proposed map a little later on this year. So I'm going to start at the very basics. So you don't need to know anything about zoning. I'm going to cover it all. If you have a little bit of a grasp on zoning, if you're familiar with the process, there will be a timestamp in the description that'll allow you to basically skip to the meat and potatoes. But just to make sure everybody is clear and we have a good understanding of what we're talking about here, I'm going to start with just the basics. What is zoning? So zoning is the rules that determine how land can be used. That includes what you can build, where, what you can't build, and where. We call that the zoning code. Within the city of Memphis and unincorporated Shelby County, that's what we call the Unified Development Code, or UDC. The UDC, of course, has two components. It has a map that cuts the city up into different districts, and then it has the code text that says, okay, the map has put you in District A, what is allowed in District A? We are currently in the process of updating both of those. What we're talking about here today is the map. We had the first public draft of that map available. It may be how you got to this video. And so this video is going to give you all those tools you need to give us feedback on the map. And that map, again, is going to determine what is and is not allowed in every part of Memphis and unincorporated Shelby County. Really quickly, why are we doing this? The text of the UDC has gotten several updates throughout the years. What we haven't ever done is overhaul the map. We've written new text, we've written new rules, but we've never, not since 1951, changed the map in a comprehensive way throughout the whole city and the whole county in order to, align with that new text. I think it goes without saying that we're a very different city than we were 75 years ago. I did that math for you. 75 years ago was 1951. That's the obvious part. The other impact of us not having done this for a long time is we've made little changes throughout all these years. It's gotten complicated and messy throughout the years. So a lot of this is just, okay, clean slate, let's clean this up. There's a lot of things that because we've kept stacking on changes over all these years that just don't make a lot of sense. And so we're really trying to simplify and clean this up. The other thing to know is, as you may or may not know, we have done over the past 2 years, been working on an update, a 5-year update to the Memphis 3.0 comprehensive plan. We've held 42 meetings all over the city where we've gotten a good grasp on this question. What do I want my neighborhood to look like in 20 years? That's the question fundamentally I've been asking at those meetings. Right? The vision. We've gotten an understanding of what people want. What this is setting the rules in a way that makes what people want possible. that's what we're talking about. We got to rewrite these rules so that we can make sure that all these things people told us can happen. Very quickly, what do we need from you? We need your feedback. We've worked very hard to make this first draft map something we believe is going to make that vision possible. We need you to check our work. Again, we need your feedback. We need your comments in writing so that I know and your council member knows whether or not we got it right. And we need both the good and the bad. We need you to tell us you agree and that you disagree. And we need those comments in writing. Additionally, we need detail. It's one thing for you to tell me I disagree with this. What's much more helpful is here's why I disagree. That's much more helpful for us as we go and we make changes to this map pursuant to your comments. That's a big ask if you're sitting there and you say, well, I just learned what zoning was 30 seconds ago. Additionally, we need those comments on that online map. That's going to be part 2 to show you how to do that. But it may be daunting, if you don't, again, if you just learn what zoning was, that's what this video is for. We're going to help you make sure you have all the info you need to give us that feedback. So I'm now going to go into all the districts. We're proposing that the UDC cut the city and county up into 20 different districts. That may sound like a lot. The current UDC has 41. So there's that simplification we're talking about. We've cut the districts in our code by more than half. And here they are. You can see the names on your screen here. They each have their own unique color that you'll be able to see on the map. And there's several different types of districts, of course. Those include the residential districts. Those are ones that start with an R. We have commercial districts of various types. We have some industrial districts, of course. And then we have some that are kind of in between, kind of hard to put in a category. I'll talk about those. And then we have districts that have a special purpose, and I'll go into those as well. Now, each one of those districts allows some things and doesn't allow other things. That's kind of what makes a district a district. What those districts allow and don't allow is determined by something called the use matrix. And here you can see a little screenshot of a small part of the use matrix. Basically, along the left-hand side of your screen, we have every land use, everything you can use a piece of property for. And then these are either permitted, which is indicated by a P here on your screen, not permitted, which is blank, or they're permitted by special use permit. That means case-by-case basis as approved by the Land Use Control Board. And that's the core of what we're going to be talking about today. This district allows this, it doesn't allow this. So you can go to the map and decide, yeah, this is the right district for this area, or no, it's not. Just to note, this is really big. This is what you see on your screen here is only a very small part of the use matrix. We're going to hit the highlights. Don't worry about every little detail. But in case you want to go further, the full draft is publicly available for you to reference as you're looking at the map. Another final important note is just because a use is permitted in a district doesn't mean it's permitted everywhere in that district. Each use has certain standards, like a minimum lot size. Some uses we say they have to be on a corner lot. So just because we're saying this use is permitted in this district doesn't mean, okay, go wild, put it anywhere. No, each use has its own specific standards that I'll talk about when it's relevant. Okay, getting the ball rolling here with our residential districts, of which there are 5 in the draft UDC. They start with residential suburban, or RS, and then we have what we call the residential neighborhood districts, which are RN 1, 2, 3, and 4. They go up. In that order, RS, RN1, RN2, RN3, RN4, each successive district allows more than the previous. And when I say allow more, I mean allows a greater variety of housing types. Of note, RS, RN1, RN2, and RN3 all have the same height limit. We're all talking about house scale. When I say house scale, I mean exactly what it sounds. They're house-sized buildings is what is allowed. We may, RN3, we're talking about allowing triplexes and quadplexes, but they're still house scale. Only RN4 allows the sort of high-rise housing you might see close to downtown. So the first one, of course, going left to right, allows the fewest housing types to allows the most housing types. We'll start with RS, residential suburban. This allows single unit detached homes. Period. That's what it allows. It has a minimum lot area of 8,000 square feet. That's sort of moderately larger than your typical, say, Midtown lot. And you can find it on our map if you go East Memphis, areas in Whitehaven, areas in Cordova, also some areas in Raleigh and Fraser, kind of far away from our urban core, right? And of course, this is an exhaustive list, and you can see here on the map, it's sort of spread out. So that's RS. Going to the next one, allowing a little more, is RN1. This is, if you're familiar with the current code, more or less what we today call R6. This is your predominantly single unit neighborhoods, but urban, more walkable, smaller lots. We're calling that RN1, residential neighborhood 1. It allows single unit. It also allows what we call semi-attached, which is 2 single family homes just sharing a common wall. So we're adding one more new housing type. The other thing it allows is what we call cottage court developments, which are new. They're not in the current UDC. Basically, that's a cluster of small homes that's oriented around a shared court, a shared yard, let's say. These would be permitted by special use permit, which would mean they're not permitted by right. There's a public process. There's notice issued to everyone in the vicinity, and ultimately the Land Use Control Board gets to determine whether or not it's allowed. Right. This is the predominant residential district in Midtown. Some areas in Raleigh and Fraser as well. And of course, again, you can see on the map some areas in the southeastern part of the city as well. Moving up one more to RN2, this allows even more housing types. So we have all the ones we allow in RN1, right? Then let's add some more. We're going to add in 2 units, which a duplex is allowed in RN2, as are townhomes, which of course are just single family homes with shared walls. They allow 3 and 4plexes, triplexes, and quadplexes on corner lots only. That's an important distinction to make. Cottage courts in this district no longer require a special use permit. So in RN2, they don't have to go through that long public process. They're just permitted. Of course, subject to certain standards that we can talk about a little more in depth. You can find this in the Berkeley, Nutbush, the Heights area, portions of Uptown, portions of South Memphis, and some select portions of Midtown are on the map. Moving up one more, we go to RN3. Now remember, all of these to this point are still house scale. They all have the same height limit. RN3 basically says, so long as your house scale, we're good. It allows the greatest mix of house scale housing types. So we take all those we allow in RN2, and we add 3 and 4plexes mid-block. Remember, RN2 only allows them on the corner. Now RN3 allows them in the middle of the block. And we add low-rise apartments. Again, house scale, low-rise apartments. You can find this on our map in Uptown, South Memphis. It's also mapped, scattered out. You can see all these little dots around the city where there are existing apartment complexes. Finally, we get to RN4. This is the high-rise development. That's where this goes, RN4. Note it does not permit many of those house scale types like single unit, detached, attached, duplexes. This is mapped very few places, mostly within downtown itself or a stone's throw from downtown, the South Main area, areas in the medical district, places like that. One more note on our residential districts. We have throughout this process of the 3.0 update gotten the same comment over and over again. I want cool businesses in my neighborhood. I want to be able to walk to a coffee shop. I want to be able to walk to a florist. I want to be able to walk to a grocery store, obviously, is a huge one. Folks want more small businesses within the vicinity of their neighborhoods. Those are currently just prohibited by the UDC. There's no other real way to put it. The new UDC would permit them under certain limited circumstances. And we would call those neighborhood commercial establishments. Basically, let's create a small list of these things that we know are good for our neighborhoods, that don't cause problems when they're in our neighborhoods. They make our neighborhoods stronger. We've put those all under the banner of neighborhood commercial establishments. They would be subject to standards. They would have to be on a corner lot. You'd have to have a larger lot. You may have to have two lots next door to each other. And within RS, RN1, and RN2, they would also require a special use permit. So that's that, again, that's that process. That's that case-by-case basis. That's you get notice in the mail. There's a public hearing. In RN3 and 4, they would be just permitted. Okay, well, you made it through residential districts. That's the real core of what we're talking about. Moving on to the commercial districts, we kind of have two main types. One are the Main Street MS districts, and then we also have what we're calling corridor commercial districts, and they're very different. The Main Street district is exactly what it sounds like. It prohibits those auto-oriented uses, think gas stations, think vehicle repair. It's really about building great streets that are pedestrian first, that have businesses up on the sidewalk. And it's about creating places where you want to go and walk around. Corridor commercial is what we are more used to thinking of commercial zoning, in that's where these auto-oriented uses go. That's where the drive-through restaurants go. You know, for better or for worse, we have cars. We need places for uses where the car is the customer. That's these corridor commercial districts. Additionally, we've got two more commercial districts. One is the NS, or Neighborhood Services District, and I'll talk about that a little more in depth. The other one is DD, or the Downtown District, which is straightforward. So going back to those Main Street districts, again, these are those commercial districts where the pedestrian is the priority, right? So they all have a maximum setback. We're used to thinking in terms of minimum setbacks. You know, your building must be set back X number of feet from the sidewalk. In these districts, there's a maximum setback. Your building may not be set back further than X feet from the sidewalk. They have transparency standards. You know, we're trying to capture that visual interest. We're trying to create places where you want to go walk around. There's three different Main Street districts, MS1, 2, and 3. The uses permitted in them are very similar, if not identical. What differentiates them is height. So MS1 has a 50-foot height limit, 2 has an 80-foot height limit, and then 3 has a 160-foot height limit. So 1 and 2 are trying to capture those mid-rise, you know, sort of scale, and then taller buildings are only allowed in MS3, which is mapped very few places in the core of the city. Here's a brief map showing all three. They're found on major streets in the core of the city: Poplar, Union, Madison, which are places we all want to see thrive and be destinations that we can all go walk to. On the other hand, we have our corridor commercial districts. Again, these are places where the car is the customer. That's where these uses go. The difference between, there are two. One is called CG and one is called CR, commercial general and commercial regional. The first one, commercial general, is intended to serve the local area. Still auto-oriented, allows those auto-oriented uses like drive-through restaurants, but they're not trying to capture that highway customer base. On the other hand, the CR, commercial regional, it's right there in the name, is trying to capture that regional customer base, and they're located along the highways. Something you will want to know, I can feel the question coming, where are gas stations allowed? New gas stations only allowed in CR, which is mapped very, very, very sparingly and always outside of our urban core, which I think is something we hear all the time, and I think something folks should be excited about. Moving on to our two odd ducks out, we have first the downtown district does what it says on the tin, allows a wide variety of uses in order to, support a vibrant, great downtown that we all want. Here you can see it mapped. It stretches from Crump in the south all the way up to A.W. Willis in the north, and then out to encompass portions of the medical district. Doesn't have a height limit. That's where tall buildings go, is downtown, right? It has similar standards to those Main Street districts, but even more pedestrian focused. You're going to be downtown. Pedestrian's not just the priority anymore. The pedestrian is the thing, right? And so we're going to make sure that new buildings downtown really are built with great design that focus on pedestrians, that are pedestrian first. Of course, prohibits those auto-oriented uses like, gas stations, drive-through restaurants, vehicle repair, those sorts of things. Finally, something that is not quite a Main Street district, but is also not quite a residential district, is what we're calling neighborhood services. It's intended to accommodate both those that Main Street and that residential neighborhood development. It has a house scale height limit, same height limit as our residential districts. Features those max setback and transparency standards like a Main Street district, but less strict than the Main Street districts are. Less required transparency. Trying to blend in commercial and residential in that neighborhood services district. It allows pretty much all residential uses. It also allows many commercial uses, picking out those commercial uses that really belong in a strong neighborhood. The intent of this is to make sure that people have those services that we all need in our day-to-day life near their homes. We've sort of mapped it in two places. One is where there's an existing commercial corner within a neighborhood. We've mapped it in S, where we have those old corner stores. We've also mapped it along select major streets, Lamar and Chelsea being two examples. Finally, not quite finally, but moving toward finally, we'll talk about our industrial districts. There's two primary ones. They sort of do what they say. We have the light industrial district, allows light industrial uses. What's the light industrial use? It are those industrial uses that employ a lot of folks and also don't have that risk of significant negative effects outside of their immediate boundary, right? They're uses that need their own space, but they don't, unlike a heavy industrial use, carry toxins, create a lot of noise, those sorts of things. On the other hand, heavy industrial is those things. They create noise. They are not things you want to live next to. General manufacturing, waste-related services. We need all those uses. Those are uses we need. We need to make sure those uses are in an appropriate place. That place is the heavy industrial zoning district. These are uses that are incompatible with anything other than heavy industrial. Give them their own spot and say, great. Those two are straightforward. They do what they say on the tin. There's one more that's unique and new to this code that allows a selection of industrial uses, a specific subset of industrial uses, and that is the employment mixed use, or EMU district, which is what I'm going to talk about next. So we're going to talk about the EMU district, hence the EMU. So employment mixed use, this zoning district has a very simple goal: locate housing near jobs. That's something we've heard over and over and over again. It's something folks want, and it's obvious, right? People got to work. We need housing, we need jobs, we need them close to one another. There are without question, there are plenty of industrial uses that don't belong near housing, right? However, there's a subset of industrial uses that actually make our neighborhood stronger, right? They make sure our neighborhood has access to great jobs nearby, right? The prototypical example of that in Memphis is Broad Avenue, right? You have Wiseacre OG, you have some distribution type uses, some light manufacturing type uses, some like heavy retail type uses, but integrated into a walkable, vibrant neighborhood, right? That's great. Those sorts of places make our city, make our neighborhood stronger. So the idea of the EMU zoning district then is just identify those uses, allow them, and then also allow residential. And when we talk about residential, we're really talking about multifamily, apartments, townhomes, and triplex, quadplex. Where have we mapped it? Where we already have industry within the core of our city, within our neighborhoods. There are industrial areas throughout the city, throughout Shelby County, that are located near neighborhoods. Where those are, we've probably mapped them EMU. We're on the home stretch now. We've got 5 district left, and these are unique special purpose districts. I'm going to run through them quickly, just because you're going to see them and you're going to need to know what they are. They may not be what you're most interested in. The first one is the campus district. This is meant to accommodate our institutional campuses, the St. Jude campus, the U of M, our other hospital campuses, right? Where we're going to say, this is your spot. We're going to kind of get out of the way, right? The next one is the Parks and Open Space District. Protects open space. Where there's open space and we want to preserve it, prevents development there. Similar is the Floodway District, which is actually set by FEMA, not really set by us. It prevents developments in areas that are prone to flooding, straightforward. The RMP, that's the Manufactured Home Park District. We've mapped that where there's existing manufactured home parks. If you want to build one, you got to be in that zoning district. Straightforward. We've only mapped them where they already exist. Finally, the General Rural District. This is what we've mapped in the vast majority of the unincorporated Shelby County. Allows agriculture, allows, very low density, rural density, 2 acres or more lot, single family, particularly in areas that don't have sewer access. So it promotes agriculture, promotes that rural density in unincorporated Shelby County. That's 20. We did it together. We got through them, and those are the 20 that we're proposing, cutting all of Memphis and Shelby County into, and that you'll see on the map when you review it, and hopefully give us great feedback. I want to say first, thanks so much. We realize that this is a lot, that, you know, I do this for a living, but you don't. So we're all really grateful for you taking the time out of your day to watch this video and look over the map and provide us feedback. I just want to say that your comments are going to be shaping the future of our city and our county, as far as development, and development's tied to everything else. So again, can't stress how grateful we are for you taking the time to, look over this and watch this whole video. If you have questions, feel free to send them to zoning@memphistn.gov, or you can dial our main line at 901-636-6619. That's our main line here at City Hall. Press 1 for zoning, and somebody will be there and speak with you. The other thing I want to say is keep up with what's going on. We're getting into this process. We've done a lot already. We got a lot still to go. And you can keep up with everything that's going on at 901udcupdate.com. And again, thanks so much for taking the time out of your day. I hope this video answered your questions and makes you confident to give us great feedback. Thanks so much.